Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, Patronosaurus Reads. I'm Katie, aka Patronosaurus, and I read. Today I'm bringing you my August and September wrap up. I did not read as much in either one of those months as I normally do. Plus, because of my hiatus, my August wrap up would have been super early anyway, so I decided to just put them both in one video. So here it is. I'm going to be talking about August books first and then September books, but I will be having those sections split up the same way I normally do, where I talk about books in order of how I ranked them, from worst to best. So let's get started. Also, something kind of weird about August that I didn't even notice until I was putting together my list is I did not read any physical books in the month of August. I read only ebooks and audiobooks, so that's just kind of weird because normally I do try to get my physical TBR down a little bit, but I just wasn't feeling it, I guess. So my only one-star read of the month in August was Pound of Flesh by Jessica Cain. I don't even know who. Somebody was talking about books that you can get for 99 cents on Kindle or are usually included with Kindle Unlimited that she really likes, and Jessica Cain was one of those authors. And I was just like, you know what, I want something really quick and easy and like just another book to read. Like I was just looking for something random. And I read this book and it was just really bad. Like, I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yums or anything, but this book was a yuck for me. Like all the things that it talks about are not things that I enjoy. It follows a girl who basically gets kidnapped by this guy, and there's kind of the size difference thing that was really emphasized, and that's not something that I really care about. And I was like, oh. And like, again, he kidnapped her, but then it's like a 60-page book, so it's not long. So if you want to read it, you know, feel free to put yourself through that. But I did not like it. It's really bad. I had two-star reads in the month of August. The first one is Misadventures of the First Daughter by Meredith Wilde. You guys know I've kind of been reading through this Misadventures series, which is almost like an anthology series. Like each book is by a different author, and this one, as you can guess, follows the first daughter and her Secret Service agent, who kind of takes it upon himself to cure her of her partying and embarrassing the first family ways by way of engaging in an inappropriate sexual relationship. It was okay. I mean, the plot was nothing. There was something that happened at the end that was kind of out of left field, and it was stupid. It went from light, fluffy, illicit romance to attempted murder. I don't understand this book. My second two-star read of the month was Meet Cute by Helena Hunting. I was really excited for this. Like, I like these books that have the cute little animated cartoony covers, and then it's a nice little romance on the inside and sometimes a little bit of like smutty sexiness in the middle of all that. And generally these books tend to have a stronger plot than the straight up smut books, which I do enjoy. But again, the plot of this one was just not good. It follows some characters who I could not tell you their names. But they met in law school a long time ago. And the guy's actually was a like teen heartthrob on some TV show. I think he was supposed to kind of be like James Vanderbeek in Dawson's Creek. I think that's basically who this character was kind of modeled after. And the main character had a crush on him, and she embarrassed herself when she first met him in law school, except then they became rivals in law school, and they were both like fighting for top of the class. And then he did something to screw her over at the very end of law school, and so she ended up being second in the class and he was first. And so ever since then she had a grudge against him. And then I think the book takes place like 8 to 10 years later, something like that. It's many years later. And he ends up needing the services of her law firm when his parents tragically die in a car crash, and he is made the guardian of his little sister. And he gets into a custody battle with their aunt, who thinks that she should be the guardian because she's more of a responsible adult. And I didn't remember until I was even telling you guys about this, because this book just immediately left my brain because it was mostly boring. But the reason why it was only 2 stars is because the aunt is a cartoonishly ridiculous villain. Like, she's obviously the bad guy, because obviously the guy and the girl fall in love, and then the aunt is the one who's trying to ruin the guy's family, so obviously she's the bad guy. But she did such stupid stuff. Listen, okay, I'm gonna give you guys some spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you still want to, and you're not being deterred by my mostly negative review, that's fine. I'm gonna hold up my hand while I'm talking about this. So if you haven't read it, goodbye. I'll see you later on in the video. If you have read it, or if you don't care about being spoiled, okay, listen. When the aunt planted like the bottle of vodka in the sister's locker and the sister got caught with it like during the school dance, and somehow the aunt didn't immediately get blamed for it, like they didn't figure out immediately that the aunt planted it. Guys, I used to be a teacher. I still work in schools. They have cameras. They would have immediately looked at the camera footage and seen that the aunt did it, especially because it was well known at the school that there was this custody battle going on and there was some shady stuff. Like, okay, spoilers are over, because if I keep talking about this, I'm gonna be so mad. So that's my review of the book. I wish it had been better. I liked the writing style. So I might try this author again with other books. I also had 2 3-star reads in August, the first of which is Fixer Up by Tessa Bailey. This is another book that was kind of floating around. You know, it has this cartoony cover and the cutesy romance. It's about, again, this girl, listen, I read these books so long ago, I can't remember any of these characters. I've slept so many times since then. Doesn't matter. The girl who had a crush on the boy when he was best friends with her older brother, and then he became a famous baseball player, but then he had an injury and he's not able to play anymore, so then he has to move back to their hometown, and then they fall for each other. It also has fake dating trope, which I love, because in order for the guy to still be able to work in the sports industry at all, because he has like an interview coming up to be a sports commentator or something, he wants to provide more of a wholesome image rather than his traditional playboy type of ways. So he starts fake dating the girl, except then they actually like catch feelings. She always had feelings, and then he realizes that he's also catching feelings. And it was pretty cute. It was kind of boring. Like, the actual plot, I didn't care about that much. The sex scenes were fine. I know a lot of people had issues with him calling her baby girl, but I don't really care. It didn't bother me. I didn't love it, but it didn't bother me. And again, this is another one where the writing was pretty good, so I will probably read more by Tessa Bailey in the future. So yeah, it was good. My next 3-star read was Feast of Sparks by Sierra Simone, which is the second book in the Thorn Chapel series. I was gonna say trilogy, but I think there's actually gonna be 4 books, if I'm remembering correctly. So I'm not gonna tell you the plot of that one because it's the sequel. That's okay, because my 4-star reads, of which there were also 2, one of those was A Lesson in Thorns, the first book in the Thorn Chapel series by Sierra Simone. So the plot of this book is basically this group of 6 friends, when they were kids, performed some fake marriage ceremony as a game at this old chapel near this like old castle that the one kid's family owns. And then when they're all grown up, they all somehow come back together again, and weird stuff is happening, and then there's orgies. Like ritualistic orgies in the chapel. Which I feel like that's a very niche thing that Sierra Simone wrote. But a lot of people were freaking out about this book, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it. And then I read it and I was like, oh, okay. Like, it's all It's gonna be a yuck for a lot of people, but for me it was a yum. So that's definitely not gonna be for everybody. But there's also like the weird sex magic. It was just really interesting to read about, and the sex scenes were good. They were really good. So I would recommend it. And then going back to the second book, something happened at the end that was just 1,000% disgusting. Should I say it? I'm gonna say it because I feel like that's something you should know about when you go into a book. In the second book, it is revealed that there was some incest going on, and one of the characters knew that they were related, but then kept having sex with the other person. And I can almost guarantee you that Sierra Simone's gonna pull a Cassandra Clare in one of the next 2 books and be like, just kidding, they thought they were related, but they're really not. But still, they thought they were, and they were still banging it out. Honestly, I might drop my rating even more, because there was also like weird plot stuff that I was like, this is not as good as the first book. But I will still keep reading the series because I am intrigued to figure out what exactly was going on. Okay, finally gonna talk about a non-smut book, which, oh my god, all of them have been. They all have been. Who am I? So that book was East by Edith Patou, or Patou, can never remember. This was a reread for me. I used to be obsessed with this book when I was like 10 or 11, I think. And I read it over and over and over again. Like, my copy was beat up. I listened to the audiobook this time because they had it at my library, but I still have my physical copy, and it is looking rough because it's coming up on about 15 years old. It was not quite as good as I remembered it. It's not my absolute favorite book anymore, but it was still pretty good. It is a retelling of the Norse fairy tale East of the Sun, West of the Moon, in which a girl gets, it's kind of like Beauty and the Beast and Cupid and Psyche put together, which is very fun. So this girl moves into this castle. She basically gets kidnapped, and she moves into this castle with this polar bear. And every night when she goes to sleep, all of the lights turn out and she can't turn them on no matter what. And, well, lights turn on. It's like the 1500s. It's candles. But all the lights, all the candles turn out, and she can't turn them back on. She can't light them no matter what. And someone climbs into bed with her, and she doesn't know who it is. And so she is kind of on this mission to try to figure out who's sleeping in her bed. What does the polar bear want? Will she ever get to go home? Blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of working elements with this book, but it's really good. I think the author did pull together a lot of different threads really well and weave them together really, really nicely. So it's really good. They did come out with a sequel, I think like last year, but I have seen in some reviews that they actively retconned something that was made pretty explicitly clear in the first book. So I kind of just want to leave it the way it is. I don't necessarily want to read the second book. Maybe someday I will, but I really liked the ending, so I don't know that I want to keep going in this world where it had a really satisfying conclusion. Okay, I also had 2 5-star reads this month. One was a reread. That was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Everybody knows The Hating Game. It's about Lucy and Josh, and they work in this office where they used to work basically in rival publishing companies, and they were both the assistants to the CEOs for both those companies. But then there was a merger, and so now it's one company, and a new position has opened up as basically being one step below the CEOs, and Lucy and Josh are both trying to get it, and they hate each other. The Hating Game is so good. It has, I think when I first read it, I rated it 4.5, and I don't know why I did that, because on a reread, it's just everything. It's so good. The The relationship is so good. I kind of want to reread it again because now I'm talking about it and I'm like, yeah, that book is really good. I understand why it's Chelsea Dolling's favorite book because it's excellent. And my final read of the month, my last 5-star, was Becoming by Michelle Obama. I listened to the audiobook because, of course, it's just Michelle Obama's memoir talking about her life as a child growing up on the south side of Chicago, her struggles with education, her family life, both with the family she grew up with and then later on when she met Barack and they started their family, and going through Senate campaigns and presidential campaigns and living in the White House and having that pressure on their family. Is so good. Michelle Obama is so inspiring. It's incredible. I always prefer to listen to celebrity memoirs rather than reading them because I think that gives you a different experience, but especially this one I think is one that you have to listen to rather than just read because, I don't know, there's just something about Michelle Obama. She's great. Okay, now moving on to my September reads. I only read 4 books in September. I told you I did not read nearly as much as I usually do, but it was much better in terms of ratings, so that's really great. I only had 3, 4, and 5-star books in September, so that's awesome. My first book was a 3-star read. That was In an Absent Dream by Sean McGuire. I have loved all the other books in this series, either 4 or 5 stars, but this one just didn't quite do it for me. I don't know what it was. I think I was starting to feel very slumpy when I started reading this. Like, this took me several weeks to read, like 2 weeks. It's 170 some pages. It's not that long. Like, normally I would read this in 2 or 3 sittings and it just took me forever. So I think maybe if I had been in a better headspace, I would have enjoyed this better. This follows Lundy, a character from the first book, and her travels into her fantasy world, which was kind of a goblin market, but it wasn't as goblin-y as I wanted it to be. It was definitely my least favorite of all of the fantasy worlds that have been represented in these books so far. I wish I had liked it more. Like, Shauna McGuire's writing is still excellent. She still gave some really interesting critiques and commentary on society as a whole and pressure that we put on children and what is fair value. And that was really interesting because Shauna McGuire's brain is just like, I don't understand how she thinks of such things in an eloquent way, and it's just like, so tasty. But the actual story itself was unfortunately not my favorite of the series. I had 2 4-star reads in the month of September, the first of which was Slasher Girls and Monster Boys by a variety of authors. This is, I think, my favorite anthology I've ever read, and it's a horror anthology, which I don't read scary stories that much. The thing is that the authors in this book that I had heard of and knew that I liked their work, most of those were actually the stories I liked the least. And then authors that I hadn't heard of or had only vaguely heard of and have not read their books, their stories were some of my favorites. I think my absolute favorite was called Hide and Seek, and it was about this girl who plays hide and seek with death. And that one was really good. I love books with games, much like Books and Lala, because that's one of her favorite things too. And that was just so good. There were a lot of other really excellent stories. So especially if you're looking for something creepy this time of year, but also not too scary, because I don't think there were any that were really super scary. I think this anthology is a really good way to go. My next 4-star read of the month was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which is a little bit out of Sanderson's normal wheelhouse because he mostly writes adult fantasy, and this is YA sci-fi. And this is the first Brandon Sanderson I've ever read, and I really liked it. Obviously, it was 4 stars. This book follows Spensa. That's her. She's Spensa. And she wants to be a fighter pilot from her planet because there are aliens orbiting their planet, and every time that people try to leave, the aliens shoot them down and kill them. And these people are trying to like build up an army and have enough pilots and things to be able to leave their planet and go somewhere else because they crash landed a couple of generations before the events of the story. So this is not Earth. They're like from somewhere else. They're from Earth, but they are stuck somewhere else. So, unfortunately, it's really difficult for Spensa to become a pilot because her father was a coward. That's what he's labeled as. He was one of the best pilots until he ran away from a fight, and the others shot him down because that is the punishment for being a coward. So she's labeled a coward's daughter, and it's really difficult for her to be able to get into the flight school and become a pilot. So this follows her as she's trying to do that. This book was really good. I was surprised. Also, it looks exactly like Aurora Rising. Yeah, they're both Charlie Boatwater covers, so that's why they look the same. I was so annoyed by Spensa at the beginning because she was quoting The Art of War by Sun Tzu all the time, and it was so annoying, and she was so pretentious, but that was the point. And as she was interacting with more people and learning about herself, she was like, oh man, I'm being so obnoxious, and so she stopped doing that, and I was like, thank God. So she had a lot of character development, which was awesome, and there were a lot of great relationships that were built up over the course of the story, and I'm really excited to see where this goes in the next book, which I think is coming out next month, maybe. I think the scheduled release date is in November, so I'm like, especially because the end went somewhere I was 1,000% not expecting it to go, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. And I might have to reread it to figure out exactly what happened at the end, because I'm still a little bit confused, but I think that's my fault, not Brandon Sanderson's. I do think this book dragged at some parts, and that's why I gave it 4 stars. It was just a little slow paced, and there were things that definitely could have been cut, like a lot of scenes of walking and training and flying, and like it was very repetitive, so could have cut some of those. But other than that, I really, really like this story, and I'm excited to jump back into this world when the next book comes out. And then my 1 5-star read of the month was another reread, Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Are we surprised that I love this book and I needed it and I wanted to reread it? No. Everybody knows what this book is about. It's about Alex, first son of the United States, Henry, one of the princes of England. They hate each other, except then they don't. And then they make out and fall in love and send cute emails and say, history, huh? This book is excellent, and it's so full of hope and joy and love, and it's perfect. And if you haven't read it yet because you are worried about the hype and it won't live up to it, like, trust me, most books for me do not live up to the hype. If a book is super hyped up, I know it'll probably be a 4-star at most for me, but not this one. This is where it's at. So that's it. That's my wrap up for both August and July. Let me know what you think, if you have already read some of these books, or if my review made you want to read them or not read them in some cases. Go ahead and follow any of my social media. It is all linked down below. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. That's what YouTubers say. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.